Hi folks, how you doing? It's James, JT at the movies, and we are back for episode 19 of Debriefing 007. I can't believe it, episode 19. I know I keep saying that with these last ones, but I'm truly over the moon that I'm on the home stretch with this and that I've gone this far into the project, both for me and for you guys that enjoy it as well. But anyway, let us dive into the last Bond film of the 20th century, 1999's The World Is Not Enough. In 1999, audiences were given their third Pierce Brosnan James Bond adventure, The World Is Not Enough. This time the film was directed by Michael Apted and again produced by Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson, who had produced the previous two entries after the passing of their late father, Cubby Broccoli. The music again is provided by David Arnold, and as I'd already mentioned, Pierce Brosnan returns for the third time as James Bond. So this film is a bit of an interesting one for me. When growing up, my dad would quite regularly watch this. He was a really big Connery fan, he was a really big Brosnan fan, but pretty much anything else he wasn't really bothered for. Like, he'd watch them occasionally. But this one, along with GoldenEye, was one of his favourites. And I've never really enjoyed this film. Like, I don't dislike it. The only film in the series that I would say I dislike is Die Another Day. But with this one, I've never really enjoyed it. And I always take different things away from it whenever I come back to it. And I actually had a pleasant rewatch with this one. Me and Laura spent a couple of Sundays ago, spent the whole Sunday watching the whole Brosnan tenure in one go. And it was really nice to sort of see it all as part of a series. And, just sort of contained to their own little sort of like time capsule, if you like. And I did have a reasonably good time with it. But I would say that it was probably my third favourite, if you were. I would say that Tomorrow Never Dies is probably my favourite Brosnan entry, possibly tied equally with GoldenEye, depending on what day you ask me. But if I had to pick now, I'd say Tomorrow Never Dies, then GoldenEye, and then World Is Not Enough, and then Die Another Day. So, like I say, I've got an interesting relationship with this film. It's not one that I love, but I can appreciate that there is a lot of good things about it. I would say that Brosnan is definitely into his stride as James Bond and feels definitely more relaxed into it. You can tell that the writers are more comfortable writing for his Bond, and everybody just feels a bit more at home in their role. I can't quite put my finger on what it is that I'm not so keen on, but there's just something about this film for me that just doesn't tick all my boxes, I'm afraid. One thing that I do particularly love about it, and it's a very bittersweet moment, is that it is the last appearance of Q, played by Desmond Llewellyn. And I don't know whether it was intentional that this was going to be his last film. They do have the character retire, but I have also read conflicting reports that they were going to have him turn up in Die Another Day. As that film was sort of in early pre-production. Again, much like the previous entry, Tomorrow Never Dies was in pre-production while GoldenEye was doing the theatrical rounds. It was much the same for this one, and the next one, they really had their eye on the ball with the Bond films in the 90s. I suppose that long hiatus between Licence and GoldenEye will have done that, and hopefully we get the same again after No Time to Die with Bond's successor this time round. But anyway, yeah, enough about that. I was talking about Q's scene. It's a really, really beautiful scene. Where, sort of Bond almost becomes a little bit emotional, and you're not leaving any time soon, are you, Q? And I've always tried to teach you two things. Never let them see you bleed. And the second, always have an escape plan. And he lowers into the floor. I've read things that were suggesting that they would have had Desmond back for Die Another Day in 2002 had he sadly not passed away. He was in a car accident not long after this film came out. But they were obviously realising that, he's mid-80s, he couldn't do this forever. So they brought in John Cleese as a bit of a replacement. Now, I like John Cleese in Die Another Day. I actually think he works quite well in that one, but in this one, he's annoying. Let's jump into a bit of a plot recap, and I can mention any little tidbits that I want to talk about along the way. So the film opens in Spain, and Bond is sent to meet with a Swiss banker to retrieve some money on behalf of Sir Robert King, who is somebody that is a personal friend of M's. Whilst there, Bond interrogates the banker to try and find out the identity of an assassin that had killed a fellow MI6 agent, but before Bond can get any information from the Swiss banker, he's killed by the assassin. Bond then makes a daring escape out of the window by abseiling down the side of the bank with the money in tow, and we then rejoin the plot in London. It's worth noting at this point that that was supposed to be the end of the pre-title sequence for this film, but they thought that it was a little bit bland, and since it was connected to the overall story of the film, they decided to include the next action set piece in, making it the longest pre-title sequence of the entire series to date. At least, obviously, we don't know how long it's going to be in No Time to Die, but it was the longest to date, and still is the longest to date, at 19 minutes. So we then return to London, where after an interaction with King, M and James Bond, the money is actually then revealed to be laced with explosives. Bond can't get to King in time to save him, and the bomb is detonated, killing King in the process. Bond spots the trigger person, if you like, and gives chase in Q's new stealth boat along the River Thames and towards the Millennium Dome, which is now the O2 Arena in London. Bond catches up with the assassin and offers her immunity and protection if she'll reveal the wider plan as to what's going on, but she's scared and basically won't come in, and say, no, you can't protect me, there's nothing you can do to protect me. She's trying to escape at this point in a hot air balloon, and Bond's hanging onto the ropes underneath it. She actually then explodes the hot air balloon, killing herself instantly and leaving Bond to fall onto the roof of the O2 Arena. He then fractures his collarbone, and then we jump into the pre-title sequence. The pre-title sequence song is played and co-written by Garbage and David Arnold, and it's quite a good song, to be fair. I'm not really a Garbage fan per se. I don't mind some of their sort of like their hits, if you like, from the 90s, but this is definitely the standout one for me. And yeah, it fits quite well with the tone of the music, and I'm not too big of a fan of the production of it, if you like. It feels very 90s, whereas if you take a look at something that sort of John Barry might have done, or any of the other composers, For Your Eyes Only, Bill Conti did that, or whatever, the songs sort of, yes, they evoke the time, but they're also timeless, if that makes sense, whereas I feel that The World Is Not Enough's title song, and Die Another Day as well, and Quantum of Solace suffers from this as well, are too much of their time to be considered timeless. They're also not very good songs, aren't they? The latter two I mentioned there, but there we go. So yeah, the title sequence evokes a lot of the themes that are going on in the film. Obviously, Robert King, the chap that's just been killed in the pre-title sequence, and his daughter Electra, who's one of the main characters of the film, are oil tycoons, and the sort of the dancing ladies in this one are made out of oil, and it's got all that going on as well. After the pre-title sequence, Bond's on the inactive roster because he's had his medical exam, and of course he's got the bad shoulder, so M takes him off active service. Bond, realising that there's definitely more to this whole story going on that he's been involved with, as Bond always does a bit of digging and finds out that the money can be traced back to Renard, who is an international terrorist and is previously somebody that MI6 had tried to take out. They actually put a bullet in his brain. The bullet didn't kill him, but is slowly moving through his brain, making him impervious to pain until the day that it kills him. So to quote as he says in the film, he'll grow stronger every day until he dies, and that's this film's gimmick. Now, I suppose really the film will later reveal why this is done, but for me, Renard feels like a secondary character. And spoiler alert here, he is ultimately the henchman, but we go into the film thinking that he's the big bad. And he's not the big bad, like I say, he's the secondary villain, almost the henchman, if you like. And I just don't feel like there's enough weight and enough gravitas behind the character. And Robert Carlyle is such a fantastic actor, and there's so many other things that I've seen him in where he's absolutely superb. But with this, I just feel like it's just really run-of-the-mill, and just he could have done so much more with it. But he doesn't get the opportunity to really do it, for my money, in this film. Having been given a clean bill of health, and if you've seen the film, you'll know how Bond manages to achieve that, though I'm sure it won't take you many guesses, M then puts Bond back on the active roster and gives him the assignment of protecting Electra King, Robert King's daughter. Bond flies out to Azerbaijan to meet with King as she is setting up an oil pipeline there and overseeing the building of that. During the visit there, Bond and Electra go out into the mountains to oversee part of where the pipeline is due to be installed, and they're attacked by some goons in paragliders. They manage to escape though. Bond then goes to visit Valentin Sokovsky, who Bond fans will probably remember was a supporting character, and a brilliant supporting character at that, from GoldenEye, again played by Robbie Coltrane. He goes to visit him at a casino to learn more about Elektra's attackers and to find out what's going on with this whole larger plot, because he's still really not sure. He knows something's not right somewhere, but he can't quite put his finger on what it is. And it's at this point that Bond discovers that Elektra's head of security is actually working with the terrorist Renard. So Bond then kills the head of security and, posing as him, boards a plane to a Russian base in Kazakhstan. Once arriving at the Russian base, Bond poses as a nuclear scientist, and we're introduced at that point to this film's leading lady, Dr. Christmas Jones, played by Denise Richards. So I think here's one of the problems I have with this film. Denise Richards, I'm sure she's a lovely lady, she's a very beautiful lady, but she's not convincing as a nuclear physicist. And I really tried to sort of give her more benefit of the doubt and more credibility this time when watching, and sort of thinking, well, could we get away with that? And could we, is that plausible? It's really just not a believable performance for me, and the character falls into sort of Stacey Sutton level sort of portrayal from, A View to a Kill or whatever, and it could have been, such a badass character. But I just really think they missed the mark with casting Denise Richards, and I get why they did, because she was incredibly popular, and as I've already mentioned, incredibly beautiful, but like I say, incredibly popular at that sort of time of things, having come off the back of films like Wild Things and other films that she'll have been in that era. So Bond is introduced to her, and we also catch up with Renard at that site where he's removing GPS locator cards and plutonium from nuclear bombs. But before Bond gets the chance to kill Renard, Jones, realising that Bond isn't a nuclear scientist, blows his cover. Renard then steals the bomb and makes his escape, and Jones, realising that she's made a mistake and that Bond is actually one of the good guys, then escapes with Bond. And to be fair, that's one of the cool scenes in this movie for me. She's, okay, so you're a British spy, do you have a name? And sort of Bond goes, the name's Bond, and then sort of shoots something free so that the pulley system that they're on will work as a lift and shoot them out of harm's way. And then they get to the top and he goes, James Bond. I really do like that introduction, and again, like I said at the start of this review, Brosnan's really relaxed into this now, and he really is at home playing James Bond. And whilst I don't like the film overall, I would say that this is arguably one of his best performances as the character, and that was something that I really did take away from this latest rewatch. So we then head back to Azerbaijan, where M's come out on the scene because she's not impressed with the way that Bond's been handling the situation due to the feedback that Elektra's been giving her, which is slightly sort of biased to one side rather than it being the actual truth. But in a debriefing, Bond then tells M that he doesn't quite believe that Elektra's as innocent as she's letting on to be, and shows her one of the locator cards from the bomb as his sort of proof, if you like. Before they can discuss it any further, though, an alarm is sounded to let them know that a bomb is actually in the oil pipeline near where they are, and has been attached to a scouring plug that's going through the pipes. It's heading back towards the base where it's due to detonate. Bond and Jones then decide that they're going to enter the pipe to catch up with the bomb and try and defuse it there and then. When they get to the bomb, they discover that half the plutonium's missing, realising that the bomb can't actually go nuclear and is being set up as a diversion for something, but they're not sure what. Bond, wanting to find out what's going on more and realising that so long as he's alive and sort of inserting himself into the story, realising they won't get any further, allows Jones to let the bomb go off whilst they're clear of it, so that people presume that they're dead. Believing Bond to be dead, Elektra then reveals to M that she was the one that arranged her father's death after her father had offered her up as bait to Renard. It's also revealed as well throughout the course of the film that Elektra is suffering from Stockholm Syndrome and is now in love and in partnership, if you like, with Renard. She is then revealed to be the main villain of this film, which I think is a brilliant choice on the part of the filmmakers. I don't think that we've had a leading Bond villain that is a lady to date, apart from Elektra. So it's definitely something that the Bond franchise needs to do more of, is this. And I applaud the decision to do this. It was a nice change of pace, and you really didn't see it coming. You were sort of wondering which Bond girl was he going to end up with throughout the film, because traditionally there's two ladies in a Bond film. One of them ends up usually being killed, and the other one ends up making it to the end credits where they end up with Bond. And at this point, like I say, there was something definitely not right about Elektra, but you didn't know where the story was going to go. And Jones, of the two of them, seemed the more more expendable, maybe. But like I say, this was an interesting plot twist, and I'm sure audiences loved it at the time. Elektra then decides that she's going to keep M hostage, as she knows that there's going to be a bomb going off in the wider area. So she locks her up in a tower with nothing but a clock to watch, so that she can watch time pass away before her ultimate death. Bond once again meets up with Zukovsky, this time at his caviar factory, to understand further his involvement in the plot with Elektra, but before they can get anywhere, they're attacked by Elektra's helicopters, this time carrying giant circular saw blades suspended beneath them, which chop up the factory, and they also chop up Bond's BMW car, and almost manage to kill Bond and Zukovsky. Zukovsky ends up taking a bath in a vat of caviar. Now, it's interesting I mentioned this scene because it was actually a scene that was written for GoldenEye, but they couldn't find anywhere to put it into the final film, so it was held over, and the Bond franchise does this a lot. There were some scenes that were written for the first draft of GoldenEye, which ended up making their way into Skyfall as well. The chase across the rooftops of the bazaar was initially in the first draft of the sequel for License to Kill, which obviously became GoldenEye. And I do think that it's quite nice when they have these ideas that they sort of keep them on hand and think, right, okay, well, we're not going to use that one this time, but next time. I think that's just a really good little idea. After some gentle persuasion, shall we call it, from Bond, Zukovsky then reveals his previous arrangement with Alexa was for use of a submarine that was captained by his nephew. Bond, Jones and Zukovsky then head to Istanbul, where Jones realises that if Renard takes the missing plutonium and puts it into the reactor of the submarine, it will cause a nuclear incident that will take out Istanbul, it will wipe out Elektra's Russian competitors, and will drastically increase the price of her oil. This is very similar to Goldfinger, isn't it? I do think that they always harken back to that one, don't they? Because it's sort of like the, pun intended here, folks, the gold standard, if you like. And, whenever they're not sure what to do, they really do go back and nick bits from the Goldfinger formula. But I suppose, whilst that's not one of my favourite films either, in fact, when I rank these films, it goes Die Another Day, dead last, World Is Not Enough, second to last, and then Goldfinger's not one of my favourites either. So it must be something to do with the formula that I don't like. That is a whole other thing. If you want to know my extensive thoughts on Goldfinger, nip back a few videos in this series and it's in there. You can watch my rankings as well. Bond manages to get a signal from the locator card that he gave M earlier and realises that she's been held at Maiden's Tower, but before he can go to rescue her, he and Jones are captured by Elektra's men. Jones is taken to the submarine, but Bond is taken to the tower where he's tortured by Elektra in I believe it's a garrote chair, where it's got the clamp round his neck and his arms, and if she twists it, it will eventually break his bones and suffocate him to death. Just before Elektra can kill Bond, Zukovsky and his men then raid the tower. A gunfight ensues. Elektra shoots Zukovsky, but before Zukovsky succumbs to his wounds, he shoots one of the wrist clamps on Bond's torture chair free so that he's able to free himself. In a really dark scene, Bond then kills Elektra, and like I say, it is a really dark scene compared to the Bond that Brosnan's shown in his first two films and in this film so far. Like I say, he's a bit more suave and a bit more jovial and more in line with Roger Moore or maybe the Lazenby portrayal of Bond than, say, Connery or Dalton up to this point. And it's like I say, it's a really dark moment, but he handles it expertly, and it comes across just really, really well. A superb piece of acting from Brosnan there. And you, like I say again, I've said it a couple of times now, you can tell he's definitely relaxed and feels comfortable in his own shoes playing the role of James Bond. So Bond kills Elektra, he then frees M. Bond then goes to the submarine and rescues Christmas Jones. After freeing Jones and as the submarine hull is rupturing, Bond ends up in a fight to the death with Renard. Bond, of course, ultimately bests him by sending a missile into his stomach, which obviously pierces him and kills him instantly on the spot, not before telling him that he's already killed Elektra, which really infuriates Renard in his final moments. Bond and Jones then fully escape the submarine, leaving it to detonate underwater and thankfully avoiding that nuclear crisis. And then we come to the final scene of the film, which is really, it's something straight out of The Spy Who Loved Me or Moonraker or, a Roger Moore effort. It's almost as cringy as the Give Us a Kiss or the, I believe he's attempting re-entry, sir. It's up there with them. Bond and Jones are sharing a romantic encounter in Istanbul. MI6 are trying to track them down through satellite heat imaging, and basically they catch them having sex at the end of the film, and then Bond delivers the cringiest line I think that's ever been possibly uttered in a James Bond film, and that is, I thought Christmas only comes once a year. Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear. And that's the end of the film, folks. So, like I say, with this particular reviewing, for me, it was a real mixed bag. There were some pockets of it that I absolutely adored. I really loved the scenes in the snow with the paragliders chasing them and the skiing. Desmond Llewellyn's final scene always gets me whenever I watch this. I think that's just a perfect scene. I really enjoyed the pre-title sequence this time, which actually normally I find, even though it's really action-packed and quite fast-paced and it doesn't feel like you're watching 20 minutes of a film, I usually find it a little bit boring and unengaging for me. Like I said, I can't quite put my finger on explaining how I feel, and it's possibly just sort of like residual feelings from watching it as a kid and maybe not been as interested, because as I've often said in this series, my love for Bond grew out of discovering Timothy Dalton, and then really probably backwards from there, Daniel Craig and Roger Moore. Brosnan is not one of my favourite Bond actors, don't get me wrong, he is perfectly capable at what he does, but for me he's sort of, you know, towards the bottom of the ranking if I were to rank the actors. That being said, his performance in this one is really, really good, and as I've said a few times throughout this review, he's relaxed into the role now, he's comfortable in his own shoes, and you can tell he's having a great time with it. The Everything or Nothing documentary, he comments about it as well, that this one and Tomorrow Never Dies sort of blur into each other a little bit, but that he was just having a great time making them. A shout out definitely needs to go to Sophie Marceau, who played Electra King in this film. She is absolutely superb, as initially one of Bond's love interests and the person that he's assigned to protect, but then ultimately being revealed to be the villain of the piece. I do think that she did an absolutely great job, and played a really tortured soul very, very well. I mentioned it at the start, but the music from David Arnold again is absolutely superb, and on this recent rewatch where I watched all of them together, I was really able to appreciate just how good a successor to John Barry David Arnold is, and how much of a travesty it is that he's not been brought back for Skyfall onwards. I think, you know, so far, like I say, I can't speak for Hans Zimmer because I've not seen the film yet, and Hans Zimmer is a phenomenal composer, so I'm sure he will bring his A game to it. As is Thomas Newman, to be fair, but Thomas Newman just didn't feel right, and I think that they only had Thomas Newman involved because of his pre-existing relationship with Sam Mendes. But yeah, David Arnold, mate, absolutely. If by some random chance you watch this, you've a fan in me, mate, and I think that they should have you back first chance that they get. There's not really much more I can say about this film, because like I've said, it's not one of my favourites. It's not one that I come to very regularly. I rarely watch this unless I'm doing a run-through of the series like I've been doing for you guys now. And I really would love to know your thoughts down below in the comments as well on this film, because I know that this is regarded by Bond fans as one of the better entries, and I really don't know, like I say, I can't put my finger on it for myself. What, you know, there's not just one thing, I suppose there's lots of little things that for me make it one of my least favourite entries. But I'd be really interested to hear from you guys what you think about it as well. All that's left for me to do is to rate it. Now, I'm going to rate it based on this recent rewatch and the level of enjoyability I got from it at that point. So, with that in mind, I'm going to rate it 6.5 out of 10. So there we are, folks. That has been episode 19, can you believe it, of Debriefing 007, where we took a look at the last Bond film of the 20th century, The World Is Not Enough. It's Pierce Brosnan's penultimate film. I've had a great time so far with this series. There's 5 episodes left, and you will be getting those 5 episodes before the end of September when No Time to Die comes out, because I am determined to meet that deadline. I'm just playing catch up for all the times I've had to take a break from the series or not been able to dedicate the time to it that it deserves. But don't worry, our lass is behind the scenes saying you're not missing that deadline. This has been a project of yours for 18 months. You're doing it, and you will meet that deadline. So you've got Laura to thank if you're enjoying these episodes in a somewhat more timely manner, folks. Like I said before, leave me your comments down below. I'd love to know your thoughts on this film, your thoughts on my thoughts on this film, and anything else that you want to have a natter about when it comes to James Bond. I love chatting to you guys, and I love chatting James Bond with anybody that wants to talk about it. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up on the video, and if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please think about doing so. I'd love to have you stick around a little bit longer, and of course it helps the channel to grow. Above all else, folks, take care of yourselves, and I look forward to seeing you again when we get to the end of the classic era of Bond films for episode 20 in 2002's Die Another Day. Cheers!